While it's obviously a comic book movie in a certain sense, in that it adapts one of the most famous comic characters of all time, Todd Phillips' Joker is more of a character piece. It's about one man's reaction to being downtrodden, abused, left to rot by a society overrun by self-interest and dehumanizing greed, and that one man is played quite stunningly by Joaquin Phoenix. If there's any justice in the world, Phoenix's performance will be considered right up there with Heath Ledger's in terms of quality. It is just as worthy of Oscar attention, and it is arguably even more layered and more complex. Where Ledger had charitable mystery to hide behind, Phoenix had detail he had to fit into the characterization. What he has created is as subtle and nuanced as it is brutal and provocative, and analysis of what he's done could and should run for a long time. How he managed to do what he did is all about the intricacies of his observations and the little details you might pick up the first time. So with that in mind, I'm Will for What Culture, and here are 9 subtle details that made Joaquin Phoenix's Joker incredible. Spoilers to follow for the new Joker movie. Number 9. The 4 laughs. A lot was said about Joaquin Phoenix's approach to capturing the right laugh, and how key he thought it was to even accepting the role. The most instantly infamous aspect of the laugh is also a huge part of the inspiration for the movie generally speaking. Todd Phillips showed him videos of people suffering with uncontrollable, pathological laughter. We see this particular laugh repeatedly, usually when Arthur is faced with adversity or social embarrassment or a perceived threat, and it causes him obvious physical pain. He doesn't just grimace, he claws at his neck, his throat convulses, his sinews twist, as if this laughter is a psychosomatic punishment. When we learn the truth of his past, it fits even more that he would create such a response. But it's not the only laugh we see. There are crucially 3 others that lend to the picture of Arthur as a performer of increasing layers. The final is revealed as a variation on the pathological laughter, seen right at the end as Arthur considers the tragedy of the Waynes. He grimaces once more, but the pain is gone and he seems almost wistful, no longer fighting the impulse and genuinely enjoying the joke, as he calls it. Earlier, he tells his mother that his pathological laughter is when he is most himself, and it would seem that this little flash of an involved, impulsive, pained laugh is his true Joker laugh. The other 2 laughs sit at opposite ends of the performative spectrum. The first is his natural laugh, as anyone would have, his rare expression of joy that we see when he sees himself on Murray Franklin's show, and it's telling that this laugh matters the least. And finally, we have what most people thought would be the Joker laugh, the shrill jester laugh from the trailer that is Arthur's fake performance laugh. He uses it when he believes it's right to, but the truth is it's pure performance. He's performing to try and fit in. Number 8. His childish tell. Eventually, we learn that Arthur's psychological trauma traces back to his childhood and abuse he suffered at the hands of his adoptive mother's boyfriend. He had his childhood robbed from him, and then he became Penny's carer on top of that, feeding her even as he chose not to eat himself as they struggled financially. He's more like the parent than she is. The hint of his abuse actually comes a lot earlier than when he visits Arkham. The first time we see him watch Murray Franklin's show, he fantasizes about being in the audience. But it's not just the normal Arthur who sits in the audience and ends up talking to Murray, it's Arthur as a child. He talks about how it's his lifelong dream to speak with him, and to reinforce both that and the idea of Arthur never having developed fully beyond childishness, his demeanor is very much like that of a child. He softens and infantilizes his voice, puts his hand behind his back, and nervously swings his body slightly. In his dream world, he might look like an adult, but he's still very much a child. Number 7. The affected limp and bowed head. Not long after we first meet Arthur, he's been beaten in the streets by kids who steal his sign and jump him. They have no motivation other than malice and are a reflection of Gotham's poisoned heart and bleak future. Naturally, the savage beating leaves him battered and bruised, and he walks with a noticeable limp. It turns out that the limp came before the beating, as he continues to walk like that even after his wounds heal. His natural walk sees him tuck his head into his chest, slightly like a bow, while he drags his leg a little. And we know that it's put on because he casts off both when he's dressed as a clown, and when he begins to feel a little more alive and a little less disassociated. It seems that Arthur's walk and stance are performances too. His past abuses taught him to bow his head meekly, and he limps because he carries old wounds. It's telling that his way out of that effective behavior is clowning, during which time he riffs on Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton performances to find a more natural way of moving. Number 6. He doesn't breathe. Obviously, Arthur does breathe throughout the movie because he needs to. Plus, he visibly smokes and you need to inhale to do that. But there are moments where Joaquin Phoenix chose to heighten the intensity of a scene by not breathing. The first most noticeable one is when his social worker tells him that the service is being shut down and he won't be getting any kind of support or medication. He breaks into a pained smile, remembering what his mother told him about putting on a happy face, but he is very visibly not breathing. It's disconcerting because he's clearly having an anxious episode. It might as well be a panic attack, in fact, and that's usually coupled with hyperventilation. Arthur's training to suppress and look happy even as he's going through trauma, though, means he stops even that. The other time we see it is when his mother's instruction to put on a happy face comes full circle and he confronts her with the revelations of his past before killing her. As he takes the pillow and suffocates her, he holds his breath too, again almost as a means to not show his real feelings. Number 5, the unreliable narrator hints. As Arthur reveals after he's killed 3 Wayne employees who assault him on the train, his fighting back is a sudden revelation to him that he is real. He tells his therapist Deborah that for most of his life he didn't know whether he was real, foreshadowing something the film plays with throughout, the idea of an unreliable narrator and fantasy versus reality. That statement is Arthur telling us that sometimes he really isn't real, and there are little ticks throughout his performance that go to the same idea. First off, the first triple murder scene. Arthur uses a Colt Detective Special 38 revolver which holds 6 bullets. However, when he shoots his targets, he fires at least 7 bullets before the gun runs out of ammo. You could say it's a mistake on the filmmaker's part, but it fits with Arthur's faint grasp on reality, or at least with the intention to make you question it. On top of that, at the end, we see Joker remembering the sight of Bruce Wayne standing over his dead parents as he gleefully drinks in the moment. Only, this is an impossible scene. Arthur didn't witness it, but we're shown it as if he did. It's no more than a fantasy, and who knows whether it really happened. Number 4, he's a mimic. In the interviews that Phoenix has given when he talked about pathological laughter and how it informed his performance as Arthur, he also intriguingly mentioned mimicry. It's something tied to pathological emotional responses, and it's important here because Arthur is the very definition of a mimic. Whenever he interacts with another character, he tends to adopt their mannerisms. When the other clowns mock Gary for his dwarfism, Arthur bursts out in his fake laugh because everyone else is. When Sophie comes to his door and leans on it, he copies. When Brian Tree Henry's admin clerk calls him man, Arthur reflects it back to him. He learns how to be a stand-up by watching them and writing explicit notes. He prepares for Murray's show by copying other guests. And there's a far more subtle one too. In the chilling climactic scene that sees Arthur kill Murray Franklin live on TV, he repeatedly overpronounces words, extending vowels in what appears to be a mocking tone. The reality is, this is a side of his performance, and it is, again, a mimicked action. Number 3, his color choices. On the surface, Arthur's Joker costume is merely a slight variation on the Joker's usual outfit from the comics, with bold contrasting colors to set against the white pallor of his made-up skin. The color scheme is vaguely drawn from the comics, admittedly, as his first appearance had a purple suit and a green shirt. The orange comes from later shirts, and Joker's daughter wore an orange waistcoat when she debuted fighting Batgirl and Robin in July of 1976. It's supposed to look recognizable, that's obvious, but it doesn't explain why Arthur would choose those colors specifically for his Joker look. The answer, rather brilliantly, comes when Arthur goes to Arkham, a place he told his social worker he felt most comfortable. After stealing his mother's records, he flees into a back stairwell, and lo and behold, the walls are painted in the same orange as his waistcoat and the floor and pipework in the same maroon as his suit. A strange choice for such a place was the real hint at where his inspiration came from. He isn't wearing the costume of a clown, he's wearing the costume of Arkham, his true home. Number 2, his straitjacket posture. For almost the entire film, Arthur is a sinewy, twisted knot of a man, painfully thin to the extent that you worry that Joaquin Phoenix would have lasting damage done, and he did say that it destabilized his mental condition to get to that point. He's also hunched, with his shoulders curled inwards and his spine curved. It's a posture clearly designed for visceral reactions, but it isn't without context too. At one point, we see Arthur write a joke about a straitjacket that is too tight in his joke diary. He repeatedly reveals how much he loves Arkham Asylum, and he even tells the admin clerk about his crimes as a means to get locked up. It doesn't work, but he tries because he wants to be there. The reason for his posture is linked to the same thing. Arthur feels comforted by constricting his body as if he's